Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Honorable Minister Puri, our chief guest, dear friend Shekhar Gupta, founder and editor-in-chief of the print, Shubho, Virat, friends. Welcome to the 8th National Forum of Public Affairs Forum of India, PAFI. This year we are meeting in a virtual mode again, which has several positives and of course some downsides. Over the next 16 hours or so, spread over 2 days with 70 plus speakers, panelists, moderators in 16 carefully curated sessions. We are going to focus on the theme for this year, reviving the economy, reimagine, reboot, reform. PAFI aims at aligning business, society, and government on long term priorities, building trust between industry and stakeholders, helping to put in place smart regulations that do not stifle innovations, and building talent and skills to navigate the changing modes. This national forum is designed to reflect some of these priorities to foster strong relationships with communities and stakeholders. To be able to get so many star speakers was quite a challenge. My big thank you to all the speakers and moderators. I would also like to thank the management committee and all the founding members for their support. I would also like to thank the 30 odd supporters, 17 supporting organization and several media partners. Before I close and hand over to Shubho, a big personal thank you to Minister Puri for joining us today. I know he was telling us a little while ago how tight his schedule is today, and in spite of that, he's been able to join us. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Shekhar, for your continued support to PAFI. I now invite President of PAFI, Shubho Ray, to take over from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khanna. It is my proud privilege to welcome our chief guest today, Honorable Sri Hardeep Singh Puri, Union Minister of Petroleum, Natural Gas, and the Union Minister of Urban Affairs. Since his time as a diplomat, many of us have professionally benefited from his guidance and wise counsel. As the Union Minister of Urban Affairs, we have seen his very hands-on approach to implementation of projects of national importance. We have seen his dynamism when, within a few weeks of taking over as the Union Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, he was in a remote part of Russia to oversee the signing of an agreement. Perhaps a little less known side of his is his scholarly side. Not many people know about it. Both his books, Perilous Interventions and Delusional Politics, and his numerous articles bear testimony to his thought leadership. He is a proud alumnus of the Hindu College and has briefly taught in St. Stephen's. Please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Hardeep Singh Puri, our chief guest this evening. We also have a very illustrious moderator for this session. Mr. Shekhar Gupta is what I call an editor's editor. To me, he is the only editor who can simplify issues without making them simplistic. Welcome, Mr. Gupta, and I hand over the session's proceedings to you. Thank you.
Shekhar, you need to unmute. Yeah.
Mute.
Shekhar, you're mute. Yeah.
Okay, is it okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a challenging job to do, to moderate Minister Hardeep Puri. I think both of us have tried doing this with each other for the past several decades and failed. But we are built tough. Anyway, this promises to be a very interesting and very important session. And if we are looking at how to revive India's economy, the project to revive India's economy, the plans for the next 10 years, there are several reasons why Hardeep Puri is the best person for this government to put forward to present its point of view. One, he is among the most articulate and intelligent. Hardeep, we are recording all this. Members of this government. He's somebody who's trusted, who's been trusted by people across the board since for decades, much before his life in politics. He's also somebody who's made a very smooth transition from diplomacy to public life. And he's not somebody who's coming from the back door. He's actually shown the courage to go and contest in an election, a tough election from what is not a gifted constituency or a pocket borough of the BJP, as we know. Punjab itself isn't, but Amritsar in particular is tough. So there he is. But the second reason also, or the next reason, while he's the right person, is that energy. He's now in charge of petroleum, the right person in the right job. Energy will hold the key to what happens to not just to India's economy, but any country's economy going ahead. Because energy, climate change, quality of life, investments, all of that now is interlinked. So, on that note, since I promised not to speak very much, I'll start with Hardeep. Hardeep, you want to speak for a couple of minutes, just giving us an overview? I know that you have a hard stop at 2:45.
Thank you very much, Shekhar. Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Shubho. Thank you, Virat, for inviting me to join you in what I think would be one of your early sessions. I don't know whether this is the opening session, but one of your early sessions, because I heard you say that you'll have 16 such curated sessions over the next few days. I'm always very happy to speak to Shekhar, because he uses words like an artist. He said it's very difficult to moderate me. But he also added that it also works the other way around. You see, normally you moderate somebody who is given to excesses. You don't need to moderate somebody like me who's middle class in his thinking and normally sober and with the feet down to the ground. But jokes aside, all I want to say is that in any conversation that we have on economic activity, on the roadmap from here to 2030, context setting is very important. Today, we are meeting at a time when hopefully the doom and gloom scenario that many of us were subjected to, coming from very eminent members, distinguished members of the fourth estate, from others, hopefully is a thing of the past. Today, we are celebrating 1 billion doses of vaccine having been distributed. We are today in that energy meeting that I'm hosting. Our petrol consumption is a good 16% before, higher than what it was pre-COVID. Our diesel consumption is also 10-12% higher than what it was before COVID. If you look at any yardstick, if you look at our, stock market, I mean, it is crossed 62,000, registering an almost 250% growth since March 2020 lows. But see, 62,000 is a achievement in and of itself. Forget about where it has come from. If you look at issues which bedeviled us, like the privatization of Air India, I can say with a great deal of confidence that I was perhaps alone amongst many of you who actually said it would be done. Because there were again people who are saying that, you're selling the family silver, you are doing this, you are doing that. And I always turned around and said, look, the choice is not between privatization and not privatization. The choice is between privatization and closing down. And I'm delighted that both the bidding prices. Then we had people saying, oh, no, the second bid is just government profit. Both the bids were higher than the reserve price. Point one. Then I could go on and on about us in the global manufacturing, this thing, how much our GDP has grown, what we are planning to do, but I'm going to stop here because I think the idea is to have a conversation with Shekhar. And let me say, I am placing on record today that we are well on the way to becoming a $5 trillion economy from a $2.89 trillion economy before COVID by 24-25. And again, I'm sticking my neck out. We will be a $10 trillion economy by 2030 when the world finishes, the global community finishes the sustainable development goals or the 2030 agenda. And I have maintained all along that for the SDGs to succeed, India has to succeed. And India will succeed, and therefore the SDGs will succeed. And I'm open to questions on, our energy policy. I agree with Shekhar. Energy is the crux of it because, again, my last comment, Shekhar, our per capita consumption of energy is 1/3 of the global average. we grow from a $2.89 trillion economy to a $5 trillion economy, something we're already witnessing, our petrol and diesel consumption are going up. But we have another factor which we must never lose sight of. Shekhar, 85% of our liquid hydrocarbon imports requirements are dependent on imports, and 55% of our gas requirements come from imports. We are vigorously ramping up our E&P, which is our exploration and production in the Northeast. 2 weeks ago, we announced increase from 30,000 square kilometers to 60,000 square kilometers. We have said repeatedly, including PM in his interaction with global CEOs, that out of the 26 or so sedimentary basins, we are only exploiting 6 or 8, and we are going to put the others in. We have carried out a number of reforms. We are carrying out more reforms. You will see more and more E&P. We are moving towards 20% biofuel blending. We are moving from 6% to 15% of use of gas in our energy mix. So there's some revolutionary stuff underway. And I'm sure that this thing of the past, that out of a 3.5 million square kilometers land area, we only explore in 7 to 8%. We're getting some notable successes, including in parts of India where we had difficulties. We have spoken to the chief ministers. It will open up. So I'm going to confine myself there to that, and then I'm available for grilling by Shekhar.
Oh, so if I might pick up a thread from this, will you mention some of these areas where we had difficulties, where you've spoken with chief ministers? Because we are a very underexplored country. I agree with you.
Yeah, I will not share the precise details because this is a work in progress, but there were parts of the country where they didn't think that exploration and production was a good thing. There were parts of the country where people thought there are issues of ownership of the submerged assets. We have been happily gone ahead and I think resolved many of those issues.
Yeah. Are these offshore or onshore?
Onshore and onshore.
More onshore. So let me take you back. You talked about Air India, and we know that when this happened, you were not the minister for the portfolio. Our mutual friend, Mr. Sindhia is. So compliments to him also, and I see that he's also speaking on the forum. But this, to me, the sale of Air India is a landmark event. It was not the biggest public sector company by any stretch of imagination, but it was the most visible. It was the only Indian brand known all over the world. That's what made it even more challenging to privatize it. Just give us a little insight into how you went about doing it, because in this might lie the key to many such other successes going ahead.
Well, let me say two things. One is an attempt was made to privatize Air India on earlier occasions. We learned from the mistakes of those occasions. Just for example, that somebody decided, no, let's not get rid of the entire asset. Let's keep 24% for the government. Well, when I became a minister and I rewind back to June 2019, we started the Air India privatization process in, I think, September or October, within few months of my joining. I mean, the concerned government department which does this is DIPAM under the finance ministry, but the line ministry has a role to play. Then we completed it in, I think, August or September, and I was the minister till 8th July. So, I mean, that process, if it had gone wrong, I would have been the fall guy. If it has gone right, anyone who wants a credit is welcome to it. But there are two things. One, we learned from the mistakes of the past, but more important, as we went along, we introduced correctives. Look, at a time when civil aviation was dampened by the effects of the COVID, it required some margin of persuasion and some outreach to tell prospective buyers that don't let your mind and your mindset be clouded by the fact that we are under a closed lockdown, or that levels of domestic and international traffic are very low. I mean, our high international traffic and high domestic traffic. Let me give you some examples. We have pre-COVID highs of something like 424,000 travelers a day. Today, even after opening up, we have only about 350,000 or thereabouts. So the bids came in, and both the bids were beyond the reserve price. That's the good news. I think the ability to do that, a determined political leadership, the Prime Minister personally, who was committed right from the beginning, our ability to navigate through those who were creating hurdles. There were many people, some who have relatives working for Air India, others who like the fact that the government can have a big patronage. You know, I mean, and the line I took finally was, look, you have a minister, you have a civil aviation secretary, and you have your CMD Air India. All are convinced Air India must find a new home, because otherwise you are 8,000 crores of public money down the tube on a daily basis, and I don't have the capacity to go to my senior colleague, the finance minister, and keep getting fills on a regular basis. So clear, and the strategy, both all the concerned departments, we were not supposed to know who the bidders are, but everybody knew. You know what the market is able to take, and I'm very happy that they all did that due diligence. I repeat myself, Air India is a first-class asset. It has 120 planes. It has landing rights in about, I don't know, 50, 60 countries in the world. It has routes. It has other assets. It has a brand. And it has so many other things going for itself, for excellent engineering staff and so. So I think you're absolutely on target. It's not a very high value. I mean, if you compare it to some of my oil companies, I mean, we're doing BPCL hopefully very soon. But it is high visibility. And also, I think it has a transformative effect. Anyone who understands privatization and divestment realize that Air India is to that extent a game changer, and it has suddenly introduced a new positive mood on the economic front, both in terms of privatization and hopefully all our larger plans on asset monetization also.
Well, that's a valid point and a good point about BPCL, because that's a much bigger company. So I will ask you to tell us how long it might take and at which stage is the process, because that is the next big milestone in privatization. Also, I think you might want to correct yourself a little bit, because I think it was a slip of the tongue. You said 8,000 crores a day of losses.
8,000. 7,600 1 year, 8,600 crores.
Yeah. Not a day, per year, because
No, per year. I think it's the audio. Just to correct it, I used to say in Parliament 20 crores a day. So if 365, that takes you over 7,000 crores, and that's an average, Shekhar. I mean, if you take an extended period of time, it's worse.
I was just correcting it so that nobody takes out those 30 seconds and then says, see, Shekhar Gupta's friend is saying 8,000 crores lost in a day. That besides BPCL, what are the next steps and what process are you following?
Well, I am very new, and even if I was in the total no, I wouldn't share it as I didn't with Air India, because DIPAM is going to do it. But my understanding is, as in the case of Air India, where the concerned department, DIPAM, had said there are multiple bidders. I expect there to be multiple bidders for BPCL also. There are sequential procedures which have to be followed. One of them is that the prospective bidders will need access to your data room and do all that. I think when you're dealing with an asset like BPCL, it's not as complicated as dealing with an asset like Air India. Because, Air India, you look at the assets, but you also look at the downsides where the balance sheet could be open to interpretation, etc. So I think that process is going on. I never put a timeline on this. All I can tell you is all the feedback I have, it is proceeding well, and it is something that is being looked at in the very near foreseeable future.
Well, that's excellent. Now, just for our viewers and listeners, I also want to underline the fact that just like Air India, BPCL was not an asset created by the Indian state or by the socialist regime. It was also something that had been taken over. It was a successful running company like Air India, by the Tata. Similarly, BPCL, HPCL, Oil India, these were all running companies that Mrs. Gandhi nationalized in early 70s. So basically, these are assets that Government of India had taken away. That said, Hardeep, you said India will go to, you're sticking your neck out, go to $5 trillion by 2024-25. That's not that far away. That's 3 years. Usually, politicians should make promises to which they will not be held. So, you say by 2050, I'll be the biggest economy in the world, right? Although I hope you and I live till then to exchange notes. But 2024-5 is too soon. So, do you understand the kind of growth rates it requires in the next 3 years, even nominal growth rates?
No, I do. I do. But I also want to submit to you, Shekhar, and to our friends in PAFI who are here. The pandemic has produced an entirely different set of growth drivers. Let me give you one or two examples. There were sectors in which we were virtually absent. I mean, when I was PR to the UN in Geneva, and I was accredited to the WHO, I used to take great pride in saying India is slowly but surely becoming the pharmacy of the world. But that is okay insofar as, the production of generics was concerned, up to there. But, the pandemic and your vulnerability to global supply chains, particularly some of them geographically located in a particular part of the world, you suddenly realize that unless you got your act together, it is not going to work. And the revival of the health sector, you didn't make PPEs, you did not make masks, that is much lower in the skills segment, you didn't make ventilators, remdesivir, all that. But as civil aviation minister, I had to find 1,500 tons of medical equipment when civil aviation closed down. We flew around 900 tons within the country. We were not vaccine manufacturers. Look, I don't like political point scoring, because when I do that, they think that I'm ungrateful to a previous government under which I served. I try to remind them I didn't serve them because of the political this thing. I passed a UPSC examination, and they must have found some utility in my role. They appointed me to these jobs. But fact of the matter is, we had a vaccine manufacturing capacity, Shekhar, in the public sector. We disbanded that between 2004 and 14. Now, all the guys, this is what I talked about context, all the guys who were spreading vaccine hesitancy, etc., said, Modi ji, hamare bachchon ki vaccine kahan hai? Where is the emergency use authorization? A very bright person who happened to be a student of mine, I don't want to name him because he thinks he's now my teacher rather than me being my student. I said, you look at the language. The language is emergency use authorization. And Bharat Biotech, now you are facing a growing pandemic which is rearing its ugly head and is devouring the world. What did you do? Today we have succeeded in 272 days to administer 1 billion doses. Let me give you a few other statistics why I think 2024-25 is not too far off, but we can reach there. Let me give you our exports. A few weeks ago, the Commerce Ministry reported that 101.89 billion exports in the quarter ending September. First time that Indian exports crossed 100 billion mark. Why is this happening? Some of it is policy corrective. Some subsidy schemes which were generally available and diffused and everybody was just collecting that. You're having a more focused PLI scheme. Maybe that is bearing results. I don't know. But it's the beginning. But you have several other things. Look at, for instance, your Global Manufacturing Risk Index. We were ranked second by Cushman and Wakefield. You look at the petrol and diesel, you see, if economic activity is rising, petrol and diesel will rise. That also explains partly the price rise. We have a thing to fight there. India has already achieved 100 gigawatts of the 450 gigawatts target from renewable energy. Then when I look at the foreign trade policy and other issues relating to it, 4,400 crore investment in export credit guarantee corporation in 5 years to provide support to exporters. I want to conclude by Gati Shakti. You know, when I was in the Commerce Ministry, I used to marvel at the high logistic costs. You know, you can produce goods and services, but if their transportation and logistical cost is going to do that, I mean, how much of our food was, you know, perishable food was not getting to the target. Now you have lychees grown in one part of India, landing straight in the Middle East. You have the fruits of the Northeast region going. And I think the Gati Shakti, and I'm writing about it also, and you know, all of it, the whole significance of that, Shekhar, I think is not seeping in. For the first time, I see things happening where the silos of individual departments are being in a cooperative manner. There is a whole of government approach on manufacturing, on logistics. I mean, look at air connectivity. I mean, I am, you know, if you look at the number of airports in UP alone, and I don't mean just Kushinagar and, you know, Jaipur coming up. Look at the areas where connectivity has come in through the Udan scheme. You know, if you have people moving around, you have business, you have economic growth, and frankly, normally they say a good economy working on the normal pace should double every 5 years. So we were already 2.89 or $3 trillion in 2020. I mean, it should be in the normal course also. 2025, it should be $5 or $6 trillion. But I think the corrective steps which have been taken by the government and the overall mood. I mean, I was talking to the global energy CEOs. I talked to other people who are dealing in the housing and urban affairs sector. Look, today, India, with its population, rise in economic activity, offers a win-win to a lot of people. That is for the first time after a long time expressing itself in our external sector, in our exports of goods and services. If you look at the foreign exchange reserve, that's a very impressive figure. You look at the number of highways that are being built. There's an increase in 300% from 12 kilometers a day in 2014 to 33.7 kilometers a day in 2021. So all I'm saying is we are poised for growth, and I don't think you need to be too risk averse to say it will be. Look, Shekhar, I don't know about 2030 because you're probably younger than me, but 2025 we'll have a good spiritual discussion. I'm sure we'll be easily at $5 trillion.
Well, I think the whole country will celebrate. I'll celebrate, but I also know that in these 3 months, it would require like a nominal growth rate of 20%. If India can do it, it will be like those hyper growth states of East Asia many decades ago. Nevertheless, we should only hope for the best and be optimistic. But Hardeep, your own sector, energy, oil prices, and I know that most members of PAFI and most people here don't even know the price of petrol and diesel. I don't know how many of them look at the prices. But how do you explain this paradox? First of all, how long will fuel prices keep rising in India, retail fuel prices? And second, how come there is no elasticity in fuel prices? Fuel prices are rising, consumption is rising.
Well, it's very simple. First of all, I think you're being very unfair to Ajay and Shubho and other colleagues here when they say they don't know the price of oil, because what you're implying is that they are so well-to-do that you know, 2, 3, 4 rupees a liter of petrol price hike or diesel price hike doesn't interesting.
They're all consuming more and more.
No. I think they are also very sensitive people, and a public affairs forum has to factor that sensitivity in. I might try to argue that you also don't know that it doesn't pinch you personally, because anybody who drives a big car probably it doesn't matter so much.
I have a hybrid.
Well, all right. That's not an inexpensive car. But Shekhar, jokes aside, you see, when economic growth is accelerating, in that kind of a scenario here, whether the price is 98 rupees or 105 or 110 rupees, is not likely to result. High prices will not, you talk about elasticity in dropping of demand. If you consciously decide, for whatever reason, that you want to reduce your consumption by 5%, well, price will drop because, frankly, India is a sui generis case. I can't think of any other country in the world today which suffers partly and which can also exercise its leverage. Because I think China is stable, saturated. How much more can they? The coal crisis, gas prices, severe winter is a separate issue when they're affecting gas prices, etc. But why is this happening? Very simply, I have to use my words very carefully. I've spoken in the other forum also, Seravi. The supply curve has been kept below the demand curve. And that is designed as a recipe for high prices. I'm told next year it will change. But in the short run, I think the message that needs to be delivered home by us, by you and everyone, is that high prices of energy can and will certainly undermine global economic recovery, not only in developing countries like India, but also in the industrialized West. And that would go against the interest of the producing country. So that message must go home. Meanwhile, we are taking a large number of actions. I'm reaching out to my counterparts in Saudi Arabia, UAE, Russia, United States. There are other countries in the world, US, Japan, which are worried about high energy costs because it will undermine the recovery. But that's somewhere where we have to use our margin of persuasion. In India, we have a large percentage of population which has developmental issues. So obviously, you want to ensure that the price of energy at the point of the petrol bunk is under control. But there, the central government and the state governments, in a spirit of cooperative federalism, have to pool their resources in order to make sure that the price is under control. But as I said, the conversations have just begun. I am not in a position to answer that. If they take, I've heard statements by OPEC and OPEC Plus that they will increase production. It's not a question of increasing production. Some of the high prices are due to underinvestment there. And also the cost of transition to green energy being factored in. But you also have to release your production. You can go on saying I'm increasing your production, but you have to release the increased supply into the market so the price will come down. But Shekhar, I continue to be an optimist, even against what I call unprecedented challenges. And I'm sure we will navigate our way through, as we did through COVID also.
Well, that's a very good note to conclude this on. I know that I don't want your minders to develop an adverse opinion of me, because I don't want them to cut me out, because as somebody who holds you onto you for too long. So we'll let you go. Thank you very much. And maybe we'll resume this conversation in a more spiritual environment in the course of it.
Shekhar, my minders are in awe of you. That's why when you told me कि Shekhar Gupta साहब के साथ आपकी बात होगी तो वो तो it'll be such an interesting. So they're paying you a compliment also, but they're in awe of you. So they will never be adversarial. But thank you very much. I literally have to run to make another presentation somewhere. But thank you, Ajay.
Sir, just 1 minute, Virat, very quickly.
Thank you,
over to
Honorable.
you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you for the time. Thank you for going into the details like you always do. The forensics of Air India were particularly interesting. Your passion of the margin of persuasion to get this thing across the line is very inspiring. Thank you for re-emphasizing on the 5 trillion and being cogent in the reasons that you provided, which gives us a lot of confidence. We realize it's a big challenge, and the importance of Gati Shakti. We promise that we will bring together an event around Gati Shakti at PAFI and make sure that more and more people know about the importance of that. So thank you. And thank you, Shekhar, for being brilliant, as always, asking all the right questions, including 20 crores a day and not 8,000 a day. I was sort of taken a little bit of that. So thank you for this fantastic session. Please stay over as we move to our next session, which is going to be with some CEOs. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Shekhar. I'll request Shubho and Virat to stay on. And Manmeet, can we keep this session on, please? Thank you. So, Shekhar, thanks so much. Really appreciate.
Thank you, Ajay. I have to economize on how much I can speak, because I've got a congestion. This is pre-Diwali congestion. So I guess.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, to the audience, I'd like to say that thank you for joining us today. We have a few more minutes, and I'd like to just talk a bit and then request Shubho. We have a very important message from the Honorable Prime Minister, which he will present to you. But before I do that, lots of people have asked me in the past that what does PAFI stand for? And I like to articulate that before I invite Shubho. So our aim is simply to align business, society, and the government on long-term priorities. Second, building trust between industry and stakeholders. Third, helping to put in place smart regulations that do not stifle innovations. And most importantly, which Virat is leading this effort, to building talent and skills sets to navigate the challenges ahead. And we have a lots of students who've joined us today from various educational institutions. So this forum, which you will see in the next 15 hours now, is designed to reflect some of these priorities to foster strong relationship with communities and stakeholders. And we've been fortunate to have so many speakers who have agreed to join. We are delighted that we have more than 1,000 delegates registered from corporates, think tanks, government, NGOs, media, industry bodies, bilateral associations, global organizations, students, faculty, diplomats, you name it, we have it. In addition, I'm told there are several other people watching this forum live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and PAFI website. With this, I'd like to invite Shubho to quickly present to us. We are actually honored and delighted to have received this message from the Honorable Prime Minister. It is also displayed on the website of PAFI, but over to you, Shubho.
Thank you, Mr. Khanna. I'll just read it out as we received it, and I start quoting. It is heartening to learn about Public Affairs Forum of India organizing the 8th edition of its annual national forum through the virtual mode. The spirit of this year's theme, Reviving the Economy, Reimagine, Reboot, Reform, is visible in India's resolute efforts as we move ahead to create a new India. The annual forum itself exemplifies the resilience of mankind against the once-in-a-century pandemic. In the midst of the challenges posed by COVID, India remained firm to undertake reforms, even when major economies of the world became defensive. In the post-COVID world, India is steadfastly striving towards self-reliance for global good. Our government has been committed to ensure that governance becomes process-driven and people-centric. Our emphasis has been on making development holistic and inclusive. Through reforms aimed at transforming every sector, be it agriculture, manufacturing, industry, or infrastructure, India is marching ahead at a rapid pace. Technology and innovation have played the role of enabler and force multiplier towards ensuring the last mile reach of our delivery systems. As the nation celebrates Amrit Mahotsav of its independence, our vision to build a glorious India is driven by the collective resolve of 130 crore citizens. The role of valued stakeholders such as PAFI assumes even greater importance in such a scenario to capitalize on the opportunities in the resurgent New India. I'm sure that the deliberations at this edition of National Forum will provide vital inputs for policymakers, businesses, civil society to chart out a futuristic roadmap and be a part of our growth story with the mantra of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas. Best wishes for highly successful deliberations at the 8th edition of PAFI's National Forum, unquote. So that was the very, very inspiring message from our Honorable Prime Minister. I now hand over to Virat Bhatia, Vice President of PAFI, to close the session formally. Over to you, Virat.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. I want to particularly recognize the young students who've joined us, delegates who've joined us, my colleagues. Thank you for being at this session. We will shortly go across to a session that is going to be moderated by Mr. Rohit Saran. It's with the CEOs. Excuse me. Mr. Suresh Narayan, CMD of Nestle India, will join us. Mr. Rajan Anandan, Managing Director, Surge and Sequoia Capital. Daisy Chittapalli, Presidents, Cisco India and SARC. And Mr. Amrish Puri, CEO, Pine Labs. And we have 5 very exciting sessions following that session. Please stay on. we will shortly transition across to the next session, which promises to be a real treat with the CEOs.
Thank you, Shubho. Thank you, Virat. Thank you, participants and delegates. We have a couple of more minutes to go. We will go into silent mode for a few minutes before we start the next session. Thank you so much once again. Bye for now.